Hi, thank you for joining us tonight. We're glad you're here. At this time, we'd like to ask everyone to mute their microphones to help minimize background noise. Welcome to the second meeting in our special topic Zoomcast series. Tonight, we're going to be talking about breaking up with isolation to avoid breaking down, how to deal with isolation, and the social aspects of recovery. Before we get started tonight, we'd like to share a few things. First, our Zoomcast tonight will likely last around 90 minutes. The special topic series was created from a desire expressed by many during various recovery meetings. These Zoomcasts are open to anyone from any 12-step programs, but are not affiliated with, endorsed by, or registered with any specific 12-step program. We will post the flyer for the remaining upcoming Zoomcasts in the chat box. These Zoomcasts will run through December. All 4 of our Zoomcasts will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel, Growing in Recovery. So if you missed our cast from September on healthy communication in recovery, or would like to rewatch these casts in the future, or maybe you'd like to even pass them along to others, or even if you want to check out some of our previous Zoomcasts, the link to our YouTube channel will also be posted in the chat box. We will also post a resource flyer in the chat box as well that contains some of the things we will talk about tonight. So please don't forget to download the flyers and save the chat box. Also, in order to protect everyone's anonymity as much as possible, your names will be removed from your video box. And also, if you're not comfortable being recorded, feel free to turn off your camera. So let's get started. Hi, my name is Allie. I am an adult child of a dysfunctional family, a codependent, and a grateful recovering addict. As we move into our meeting tonight, we're each going to be sharing parts of our stories as they relate to isolation and how socializing can help us with our recovery, which in turn can help us break out of our isolation. And now I'd like to introduce our other host for the night, Kendall, as well as our special guest, Paul N. Towards the end of our cast tonight, Paul will be doing a short meditation for us. We are very happy to have him with us, and I don't see him yet, so he will be on in a little bit. So please stay tuned for that. Kendall, would you like to introduce yourself? You're muted.
Duh. Hey, everybody. This is Kendall. Welcome. Glad you all are here. And I'm a member of AA, Al-Anon, NA, CODA, and ACA, and OA. Glad to be here. If it's an A, I'm in it.
Awesome. Thank you, Kendall. Okay, after everything that's happened with the COVID-19 pandemic over the past few years, the isolation many feel and experience has increased and social interactions have decreased. So how does isolation harm us? Well, our isolation often comes from letting our fears control us, whether it's fear of COVID, judgment, or something else entirely. It can have negative effects on our mental health, but can also lead to negative effects on our physical health. It adds to our depression and possible suicidality. It increases our anxiety. It can increase or cause the development of OCD or OCD-esque patterns. It can increase our risk for addiction, whether that be people, food, drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, gaming, etc. And it can also become habitual and make it hard for us to get out of these patterns. So why do we isolate? Well, we alluded to it a little bit ago. Fear. We let our fears control us, and we get to the point where we start to believe the lies and the stories we tell ourselves, and in turn let them control us. We isolate to protect ourselves from harm from other people, and usually to avoid risk of some type, and likely many other reasons as well. So how do we break out of isolation? Well, for one, we socialize in healthy ways. We engage therapy or other mental health engaging therapy or other mental health or addiction resources, 12-step programs, and building and reaching out to your support network. So one of the lies that isolation tells us is that we're alone. The truth is we're never alone. There are always people around us who care about us, are willing to listen to us or help us out, and are willing to walk the path with us out of our isolation. So let's dive in some more and turn this over to Kendall. Kendall.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Allie. Welcome. I'm very humbled to have an opportunity to share 15 minutes or so with you. Some of you know that I have a tendency to be verbose and loquacious, two words I don't get to use often, which of course mean I am a long-winded, chatty native New Yorker, but I'll try to keep to that time frame. I was discharged from the hospital today with small bowel obstruction over the weekend. Totally unexpected and serious, but not requiring surgery. Woohoo! I declined this time to be a victim, and I used every recovery tool to refrain from diving into the pity party. I focused on what I could do to heal by being a patient, not my strong suit, and focused on this presentation. I'm incredibly grateful for my awesome recovery family, embracing me and encouraging me, and with a modicum of faith that God is the great physician, healing me through an army of angels and a ton of giggles. I've had the pleasure of many phone calls and text messages. I thank you for that. A dear friend brought in a 25-foot cable to the hospital to attach to the TV through an iPhone, so I could have my choice of 1,000 movies to watch while I stayed there. I attended my grant sponsor's Zoom room meeting with a cherished friend on her laptop in my hospital room on Monday. I have not been alone. Life's going to happen, not on my terms. My only answer now in recovery is to surrender, let go, and trust God to the best of my ability, to accept what I can't fix. My third sponsor likes to say, "Thank you for my faith, Lord. Please grant me a little more." She was shot and left for dead with the bullet still in our brain, and I hardly know anyone with more joy and peace in recovery. God remains a mystery for me, and I'm still trying to tease out the God of my youth, who was harsh, punishing, and judgmental, and was taught to me by flawed human beings, to the God of my recovery, who is loving, powerful, and healing. Isolation is the last stage of alcoholism and all addictions. Finding a relationship with God or a higher power of our own choosing is how we get out of isolationism, because we then become a part of a recovery fellowship. Isolation has been a part of my life, all of my life. Addiction in all of its forms involves obsession and compulsion, regardless of its etiology. My first attempt at self-soothing was compulsive overeating, which has been a lifelong challenge. Even got addicted to a Fruit Loop, went on a cruise, I was hungry, going to the beach, grabbed a little box of Fruit Loops. Well, I ate one of those and I liked it mighty fine. So the next time I went to the buffet, I got another box. Then I was getting a box with every meal. Then I'm bringing them back to the room. My niece was like, Kendall, what's up with these Fruit Loops? Get back to Withville. They had a BOGO at the Food Lion. There's 2 food lines. I went to both food lines, got the deal there. Then went through those, went to Walmart, got the family size box and a bunch of Ziploc bags. So I had Fruit Loops in my car, at the office, and at the apartment. Someone cleaned out my desk for me when I departed. She said she found Fruit Loops and wondered what the deal was. So my addiction can be triggered just that simply. The next addiction that I had was academic learning addiction, trying to prove that I wasn't stupid and being driven by a sincere desire to help others. I flunked out of college, returned home, and asked the dean of the City University of New York if he would allow me to matriculate there. I'd explained to him that there was a dorm fire, I didn't acclimate well to the pre-doctoral program, and I'd been stalked. He replied, "We don't take people with GPAs of 1.8. I thought to myself, why not? He advised me to take 16 credits, B or better, and he would allow me to matriculate. I finished magna cum laude with a triple major in anthropology, biology, and chemistry. Of course, as is the case with any addiction, it wasn't enough. Despite the odds stacked against me and being ill-advised by my own family physician, I applied to medical school and was accepted. I was tutored and I became a tutor. Much to my shock, I finished at the top of my class and was inducted into Alpha Omega Alpha Medical Honor Society. I completed my internship and had applied to Harvard for an MPH. They never let me in, as I still felt stupid. Fortunately, feelings aren't facts. And I was accepted to Harvard, and I received my Master of Public Health degree in 9 months. I resumed my training at George Washington University and became an active chief resident and a clinical associate at NIH, working under Dr. Fauci. I've been privileged to work in a variety of settings, practice settings, group practice, private practice. And at one time I was on staff at 4 hospitals in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I also did the News at Noon with their NBC affiliate. But my passion ultimately has been working with veterans and in the free clinics. I've been challenged with a myriad of addictions, perhaps seeking that easier, softer way. Online puzzles, television, food, relationships with emotionally unavailable, narcissistic boyfriends, and family members who are toxic, always projecting that I was stupid, unworthy, and a victim. Depression and health issues have also driven my isolation. I had developed intractable pelvic pain and prescribed low-dose methadone, which I was on for 4 years. I could not detox independently and went to rehab. At that time, I'd been living at home with as my father had a massive brain injury, which he recovered from fully. And I had returned home to assist him and had stayed on. Upon discharge from the rehab center, I was essentially homeless, for I knew it would be completely unhealthy to return to my parents' home. I was informed there was a homeless shelter where I could start over. I would need to work and do chores, no problem. It was in a town called Withville. And I said, what's a Withville? It's a lovely community. Which had strong recovery. I got a job working at Peebles Department Store for $6.56 an hour, and as a substitute teacher at the junior high school. My car was totaled by a Mack truck 6 days after arriving. So I enjoyed walking everywhere, taking the 50-cent shuttle bus, and was on food stamps, and I lived in subsidized housing. I loved that apartment. It was nestled in the gentle, picturesque, rolling hills of Southwest Virginia. I started going to the 6 AA meetings they had there, as there was no other fellowships, and I loved the literature, the camaraderie, and the opportunity to vent. Of course, I wouldn't take their advice and get a sponsor. For 2 years, as I remained furious internally with the world and all that had happened to me, I wore an invisible capital V on the top of my forehead, which many would exploit or harm me, which many who would exploit or harm me could perceive from a mile away. I did get a sponsor in NA, and I worked the steps 1, 2, and 3, and she's awesome. But she fired me as a sponsee, not as a friend, because as she had put it, I wouldn't work the steps. My second sponsor got me to step 4 when my father died, and I stopped working and moved back to the farm to take care of my mother with Alzheimer's. She had to have a knee replacement at 87, my brother with Down syndrome, who required a hip replacement and is a brittle diabetic, and my gift of recovery, baby Bubbles, the best dressed Snorky in the state of Virginia. I gotta tell you, I never thought I would dress a dog. I was fond of giving a good, healthy New York sneer to anybody who did. The vet said, since she was a preemie, I might want to get her a little sweater. She had 2 bikinis, a scrub suit, a wonder dog costume, a bumblebee costume with the wings, a pumpkin costume, a Harley t-shirt with the skull cap, a scrub suit, a Christmas tree costume, at least 15 hoodies, 20 coats, custom-made dresses that were reversible, a pink rain slicker, and at least 100 hair bows. She modeled and exuded unconditional love. Wait a minute, Kendall, you're getting a little bit off. I'm sorry, guys. Bubbles became blind, and she had congestive heart failure, and she was on insulin the last 3 years of her life. That season of my life was so rewarding, but extremely challenging. I had no meaningful support from my immediate family. Like any good codependent, I had martyred myself. It was my choice and was mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially depleted. I started working at the VA clinic, but resigned because of the severity of my spinal stenosis. When COVID hit, I had 2 complicated surgeries that further drove me into isolation and fear mode. My mother had passed. My brother, who quoted scripture, Bible scripture against me, that I was a selfish, evil person, died from rage at 61 from a heart attack, died from rage at 61, manifesting as a heart attack. Following an AA meeting where I expounded ad nauseum again about my family and how life was not fair, 2 of the ladies recommended I go to the local Al-Anon meeting. That's where I met my 4th sponsor. She advised me to detach from my family, except for my youngest brother, and really give the steps a chance. I had to refer to one sibling as the SEBM, the super evil bitch monster, to complete step 5. Surprisingly enough, my sponsor was okay with that. It was explained to me that I was addicted to her. Addicted to my sister? How's that possible? She walked me through the 5th step. Seeing my lengthy list of resentments on paper and working through the steps, I was able to see patterns of my hurts affecting my self-esteem. At one point, she let me know another sponsee had more resentment pages than I did. I said, well, I can write some more. She said, Kendall, that is not the point. She explained how I had been selfish, dishonest, and inconsiderate. Really? Seriously? She would ask me, can you see, Kendall, where you're being selfish? No, they did this. I did that. But the key statement that she would quote to delineate selfishness was, I want what I want and I want it now, and I become angry when I don't get it. When it was put that way, I could see it. I was angry that I wasn't receiving the validation I craved, that people didn't see my point of view or do things the way I thought they should be done. I was inconsiderate of them because they had their own free will and they could make whatever choices they wanted to make, not in alignment with mine. And I was dishonest to think that I could change a snake into a bunny rabbit or make a dog meow. Dishonest to think that I had that kind of power. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about how I had reacted and what I needed to do to affect change and have peace. Those resentments were costing me my serenity and my relationship with God. The only payoff was getting to stay a victim and blame others. I kept trying to forgive. I had to forgive. I'm a good recovering Catholic. A recovery friend said, how long does the big book say on page 553 that you're supposed to pray for those most difficult to love and who have hurt you? I said, 2 weeks. He said, and how long have you been praying for your family and those other people? I said, every day, like most of the day. And he said, how's that working out for you? You're trying to get God to fix them your way. Did God ask you for help? I replied, no, but I don't want to go to hell. He said, Kendall, you are already there. He encouraged me to stop praying for my family and to let God take care of her and let me take care of me. All of those fancy brand name universities remain on the floor of my closet. I had gone from Harvard to homeless with recovery, working the 12 steps all the way through. Despite all hesitations and fear, I no longer shed tears on a daily basis. That's part of what it was like for me. What's it like now? Working the steps. With the evolution of the Zoom rooms, expansion of my real deal recovery family, step work, and my no nonsense loving sponsor and her grand sponsor and her sister and my other sponsors and my sponsee sisters and my other family members in recovery, I had made such progress, dramatic progress, but still I didn't feel like I was thriving. Until this summer, I've been in an in-between place from illness to wellness, breaking free and hoping that each tomorrow would be better, yet each one was staying the same. Breaking free from the shackles of addiction and isolation in all of its form was jump-started when I went to Athens, Georgia for a change of venue in June and met with two of my closest recovery friends, and we had a blast. I came to Hickory, North Carolina on my way back for an overnight to visit with my grant sponsor in person. I wanted to make sure that he was not the Pillsbury Doughboy. I wanted to poke him in the arm just to make sure he wasn't a Pillsbury Doughboy. And I have been a visitor of Hickory ever since, and I love it. Not to be criticized, harshly judged, or demeaned has been an incredibly validating, healing experience. My higher power, with a capital P as it's written on the second step, has a great plan for my life. I engage socially in person, which makes a world of difference, and attend in-person CODA meetings when visiting. I use my mask and meet outdoors when going for an impromptu walk, doing my PT exercises, which I still hate, by the way. Changing my diet, losing 10 pounds. These are just a few of the miracles that have been gifted to me by a loving God and an extraordinary, amazing recovery family. As the NA literature states, as long as I follow that path, I have nothing to fear. The daily path of recovery maintenance, of working the steps and carrying the message of love and hope despite any adversity. Thanks for letting me share. Back to you, Allie.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kendall. Absolutely love that. Thank you. Okay. So what's up, everyone? I'm still Allie, still an adult child of a dysfunctional family, still a codependent, and still a grateful recovering addict. But I'm also a survivor of abuse and multiple complex childhood traumas with bipolar disorder, complex PTSD, social and generalized anxiety, severe fibromyalgia, and a few other things. The list goes on. Before I get into my story, I'd like to give a trigger warning. Even though I don't go into much detail, I will be touching on drug use, abuse, trauma, and suicidality as it relates to the isolation throughout my life. From early on in my life, due to some of the childhood abuses I went through, I learned that other people weren't safe. I learned that for me to be safe, especially at home, I had to keep to myself and isolate. I learned to stay isolated in my mind because my home wasn't safe and because that was the only place where I could feel safe. I wasn't even sure my family was safe, but the only place where I didn't often isolate was at school because school was another of my safe places. It was pretty much the only place I felt safe, even through high school. And even then, I still isolated sometimes. And one of the main ways I isolated growing up was by staying in my head and believing the lies and the stories I was telling myself and living my life almost entirely in my head. Now, being an introvert, I naturally needed time to myself to recharge. But over time, as I got older, my isolation only got worse to the point where I didn't know how to share my emotions, feelings, or much else with anyone. Granted, in grade school, my friends did try their best to get me out and socializing and actually saved my life in the process more than once. My close friends became like family to me, the kind of family I would drop everything and do whatever I could to help them out. But on top of the traumas I went through as a child and young adult, including all the innumerable times I allowed myself to be re-traumatized, there were so many layers of the proverbial onion related to my isolation that I didn't even begin to know how to unpack them. I was in my head so much that not only did it greatly affect my mental health, but it also affected my career, my social life, my relationships with my ex-wife, and those with my family and my friends. My isolation for nearly all of my life was such that I could be in a crowded room of people, with family or even with friends, and still feel very alone and isolated. It was hard to let anyone in past my very well reinforced walls. That was until I got into recovery and started to learn the value of genuine connection, socialization, and support, especially from people who understood where I was at and what I was dealing with, even if not from my exact point of view. But more on that in a bit. Over the years, this became a compounding problem. The more I isolated and stayed in my own head, the worse my mental health got. And the worse my mental health got, the more I isolated and stayed in my head. Between the isolation and problems with my mental health, this led me into addiction more than once. It led me into getting in the wrong crowds after high school and getting into some very bad situations. The problem was this all came out of a learned pattern of isolation, a learned fear that people weren't safe for me, that I couldn't trust anyone to open up to them. In turn, that caused me to hate myself and believe the lies and the story that I was unlovable, unworthy, ugly, and many other things. And when you're a survivor of multiple complex traumas, especially from childhood, and especially when you haven't dealt with them, it continues to wreak more and more havoc in your life. And that's exactly what happened. By the time I got into my 20s and 30s, I thought I had my life under control. I was doing my best to fit into society's stereotypical box, so to speak. I had a degree and built a good career in information technology. I was married, had a house, was involved in my church, and I honestly believed I had my life together. But mentally, I was greatly struggling and didn't know why. I'd wondered even up till the end of 2020 why I'd spent so much of my life depressed, angry, and suicidal. I'd wondered why there wasn't a single day that went by where I didn't think about suicide in some fashion. I wondered why, even though I appeared to have my whole life together by society's standards, I still hated myself and my life. I wondered why I couldn't get out of my head no matter what I did. I wondered why I couldn't get past a lot of my internal isolation, even though most people I knew never saw it. But some people around me were perceptive enough to pick up on it and helped me as much as they could, or as much as I would allow them to. What I didn't know was that many of my childhood traumas had been very much buried by my survival mode coping skills and my mental isolation, to the point where it took a great deal of work to begin to peel back the layers of that onion. And when I made the choice in 2016 to do whatever it took to start peeling back the layers of that onion and uncovering my traumas, I did not know that there were many underlying things, both caused by and independent of these traumas. I didn't realize there was so much that was adding to my depression, anger, suicidality, and isolation. But backing up a bit, in 2015, things started to royally go south. In March 2015, my ex's father passed away. I regretted not telling him how much I loved him or how much of a loving father he was to me because I didn't know how. I was so isolated in my own head and had so many internal walls up that I had no idea how to express my emotions and tell people how I really felt about them. 3 months later, in mid-June 2015, I was diagnosed with severe fibromyalgia, which, if you're not familiar with it, is a chronic pain disorder that for me affects every aspect of my body, physically and mentally. So here I was at 33, being told by my doctor that I had a severe chronic pain disorder that they couldn't treat for various reasons, and I had to learn how to cope without much support from the medical community. Granted, I got into a support group with others at my church that had chronic illnesses, including fibromyalgia, and this was helpful, but only to a point. Now, getting diagnosed with fibromyalgia only added to my isolation, which grew from mental isolation into physical isolation. Between 2015 and 2019, my health continued to decline, thus compounding the cycle. The worse I felt physically and mentally, the worse my isolation got, and vice versa. And because of my self-imposed isolation and because of my physical health, I lost more than a few friendships and missed many social and family events. Between 2016 and 2017, my isolation reached a critical breaking point. I went into pure survival mode and went through what I call my dark night of the soul. I was in my head so much that I couldn't see any way out. If there was a dark valley of the shadow of death, I was walking through it. I won't go into detail of the isolating images in my mind that lasted for what felt like forever. In my mind, I was only seeing a very dim light to light the path in front of me that was going through a completely dark forest. I was facing my demons head on, and it took me a few years after this to realize that Great Spirit was testing me. They were testing me to see if I genuinely was willing to do whatever it took to break down this large onion in my head, and if I was truly prepared for this extremely difficult journey and the repercussions it would have on my life. During this time, there was only one person who could get through to me, who got me to socialize as much as I was able, which wasn't much. And even though he was only in my life for 2 years, he was a large part, which was a large part of the time I was going through this. He was a true angel and helped me get through this extreme darkness. Not even my ex-wife could get through to me. This dark night of the soul lasted until one night when my isolation reached a critical breaking point. My hand was on the doorknob of my front door, and I was ready to completely give up on everything. My marriage, my career, my friends, my family, literally the entirety of my life. And in that instant was when everything changed. In that moment when I admitted I couldn't do this anymore, when I finally gave up and admitted I needed help, Great Spirit reached down a hand and began to pull me out of this dark night of the soul and the severe survival mode isolation. But even though Great Spirit was helping me walk out of this latest dark time in my life, my isolation ended up going in a different direction and straight back into addiction. Well, in 2017, my state legalized medical marijuana. Left with no options from the medical community, I had an independent doctor suggest this to me. Initially, I started out using it appropriately as a medication, but this isn't where it stayed. It became my crutch to deal with the fibromyalgia that was ravaging my body. It became my mental health crutch, both to deal with the increasing stress in my marriage, but also especially when I began intense trauma therapy, peeling back the layers of the mental onion in isolation, uncovering my childhood traumas, and the many other underlying issues. On top of this, I also struggled with other addictions related directly to my isolation. I was addicted to pornography, anything and everything technology, computer gaming, and especially my highly codependent need for my ex-wife. And thanks to the support of my ex and my trauma therapist at the time, I was able to conquer those addictions, except for the marijuana and the codependency. Well, in late 2019, one of the first bombshells dropped. The school system I was working for north of Baltimore stopped cooperating with me with my physical health issues and pushed me out, more or less forcing me to file for disability retirement through their pension systems. And of course, this happened 4 months before COVID, go figure. So it was actually a blessing in disguise, though I couldn't see it at the time. After this, my addiction got worse because of how I was essentially left with no choice but to leave a job that I loved and was very good at, but also because of forced COVID isolation. My addiction became an all-day, everyday event, as did my isolation. There wasn't a time of day when I wasn't high. And in turn, my isolation got worse, as did my mental and physical health. Then came 2020. As my addiction and isolation continued to worsen, and my mental health continued to deteriorate, my relationship with my wife also continued to deteriorate. As our marriage continued to collapse throughout the year, there were new traumas created that only added to all of these issues, which at this point was reaching another critical breaking point. Something had to give, and I was ready to give my life to end this extreme pain and suffering. All of this came to a head on Thanksgiving night in 2020. 2 days later, on November 28th, 2020, I was faced with the decision of choosing my addiction or my wife, and I chose my wife. That was the day I walked out of my addiction for good, and I haven't looked back since. Nearly 1 year and 11 months later, I still haven't looked back, and I'm very proud of that. On December 12th, 2020, everything changed when I walked into the doors of a rehab center called the Ranch, Pennsylvania, and truly began my recovery walk. This is when I began to learn how to make my recovery the top priority in my life. Granted, my ex lied to get me there. I'm grateful she did. Otherwise, I would not have gone on my own and likely would not have made it out of 2020 alive due to my severely deteriorated mental state. In short, this was the first time that the ranch saved my life, a gift I am eternally grateful for today, and one that I can never adequately repay, aside from working with others, helping them along their recovery journeys. It took going to the ranch to show me just how far down I was, how my mental health played into my addiction, and what support, coping skills, tools, resources, and medications I needed in order to get me back on a more stable plane. So not only did they uncover that I was bipolar 2, but they explained how that, on top of the complex PTSD and the extreme stress, all played a significant role in my mental and physical health, as well as my isolation. Thankfully, they were able to get me on the right medications to help me with this, and things started to improve. They also taught me the value of socialization and support and how integral that is in recovery. They taught me the value of asking for help and how there's no shame in that whatsoever. They taught me the need to pick up my 500-pound phone, especially during those times when I don't want to reach out, and how those are the exact times when I need to reach out. Everyone at the ranch, both staff and clients, helped me work through all of this, as well as when the second major bombshell dropped on December 21st, 2020, 4 days before Christmas and 4 days before my birthday, when my ex told me she wanted a divorce. Then on top of that, finding out from my sister the day after Christmas that my ex had yet again lied to me and to my sister and had filed for divorce on the following day, December 22nd. Naturally, this caused me to have a complete mental collapse. Here was my only remaining support pillar that was now gone. This was my rock bottom, and I was the only one who could walk out of it, but not without asking for help. Thankfully, I was in the right place and had the right resources to help me not isolate and relapse. Finally, I had the right support to learn how to deal with all of this in a healthier way. And because of my experience at this place, I am still very active in their alumni program. And I've even been hired on as a part-time behavioral health technician, working directly with clients, giving back to the community by helping others on their recovery walks, And even if I only help one person, then all the pain and suffering and difficulty of my recovery is worth it. In January 2021, I left rehab and walked into complete hell. I walked into a terrible divorce and a home I could not go back to, as well as many other horrendous things. The good news was, even though I wanted to isolate, I had support and a new recovery process to help me when I faltered. I had a great deal of support to help me learn how not to isolate as much as I had been previously. I continued to build on these resources and started socializing more, helping to get out of my isolation more and more. In February 2021, I joined Codependence Anonymous, and through that program in April, I entered the rooms of adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families, and have been very active in both programs ever since. Through this time, I was also able to connect with several old friends, build new recovery friendships, and expand my social support network. On top of the other healthy social recovery steps I'd made to this point, in June 2021 came a very big step along my recovery journey, and one that helped greatly decrease my isolation and increase my socializing. As I started my recovery journey and began learning how to love and reparent myself, I had this one lifelong underlying isolating trauma that came right to the surface as if to say, yay, you're finally at a place where you can acknowledge me and start working on this. Because of my social support, recovery and rehab support, and from working with my therapist, I was able to confront and admit the fact that I'm transgender and have been for as long as I can remember. Opening up to this and admitting that this is who I really am, and it's who Great Spirit truly created me to be, took a huge mental health weight off my shoulders because for once in my life, I was being true to myself. And the more I prayed about it, the more I heard Great Spirit tell me that I'm not a mistake because they don't make mistakes. And I still tear up when I think about that. After this admission, my depression and isolation continued improving even more. And for the first time in my life, I was having days where I was genuinely happy, actually desiring to be social, and where I finally wasn't thinking about suicide in some form. But as the year went on, my divorce continued to get worse. Saying that this was an extremely difficult time is a major understatement. However, I now had a recovery support structure that continued to grow and largely helped me throughout the year while remaining sober and helping me to do my best not to isolate anywhere near as much as I had for most of my life. And I was leaning very hard on my support network and would not have made it through 2021 without everyone around me, including my blood family, my close friends, and my recovery families. And then came 2022. In January, I began isolating again and came very close to relapsing back into addiction. That was when I reached out to the alumni advisor at the ranch, and an hour later got a call from their admissions team. So in early March, I went back to the ranch for a second time where yet again, they saved my life. And while I was there in mid-March, my divorce finalized. This was seemingly very appropriate since my divorce began when I was there at the end of 2020, and now when finalizing while I was yet again in a safe space. I was happy to be at the ranch knowing I had the support to help me through the final steps of this horrible process. There's no way at all that I would have made it through this divorce without socializing and working my recovery. There's no way I would have made it through that hell without the amazing support network around me, who knew I wasn't and still isn't, who I knew wasn't and still isn't going to let me fall and would continue to support me and help me pick myself back up when I needed it. Even now, still being very active in the ranch's alumni program, being active in my ACA and CODA programs, I still have trouble with isolating and getting too much in my head. But because of the hard recovery work I've been putting in, working the 12 steps with my sponsor, as well as the recovery I've worked through with my rehab program, there are an increasing number of times when I realize that practicing my program really is working. I can often hear my sponsor in the back of my mind asking me if I am being selfish, dishonest, and inconsiderate. either to myself or someone else. And do I need to go through that character defect list again? If I'm thinking that, chances are yes, I do. Throughout the journey life has taken me on, as well as my recovery journey, I've learned many lessons. So what have I learned through my recovery walk in sobriety and recovery? Socialization and support are key. Even if I'm the only one who can walk down my recovery path, that doesn't mean others can't walk alongside me in love and support. There is no shame in asking for help because I can't do this alone. I'm never alone, no matter how much I may think I am. Those times when I want to isolate or don't want to reach out or bother anyone is exactly when I need to reach out. Those are the times when I need to pick up my 500-pound phone, make a call, send a text, send an email or a Facebook message, or reach out in some way to someone in recovery who can help me get through those moments. I've learned that in recovery, especially mental health and addiction recovery, is literally life or death. One more use, one more drink, one more night alone, one more time of isolation could mean the difference between my life or between my death. So the question is, when we get stuck, when we begin to isolate, what do we do about it? Are we going to pick up the phone, send a text, an email, or a Facebook message? Or are we going to allow the isolation and the lies to overtake us? Recovery isn't easy. Getting out of isolation isn't easy. Working on our pasts, our traumas, our unresolved issues isn't easy. But in the end, the path is well worth it. Make recovery a top priority in your life, number one above everything else. Become a part of a 12-step program that works for you. Go to meetings, whether in person or online. Get a healthy sponsor and work the steps. Recovery never stops. The battle between isolation and socialization, between addiction, mental health, and recovery is never over. It's not a once and done deal. It's a constant every minute of everyday battle. Support networks and meetings can make all the difference between continued isolation, bad unhealthy habits, and socializing, getting out of our isolation, and learning how to live our lives in a healthier way. Staying isolated and staying mired in the pain and suffering that comes from it is not worth it in the end. So the question now is, if you're isolating and need to start socializing, if you're struggling with mental health or addiction, what are you going to do about it? The truth is, friends, we are all loved, valued, worthy, and we all matter. We all have a right to a life ahead of us that is full of love, support, happiness, and wholeness. We just have to be willing to do the hard work, no matter what it takes, including whatever is necessary to work the ever-loving daylights out of our recovery programs and seize that life that we desire and are totally worthy of having. I think of the saying carpe diem, seize the day, seize the whole and happy life that is waiting for you. It's not easy, but in the end, it's totally worth the journey. The choice is ours to make. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to my story. Blessings to all of you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kendall for our news broadcast.
Thank you so much, Allie. Greatly appreciate your heartfelt words and share. Thank you. And now for recovery news. This is Kendall from North Carolina.
And Allie from Maryland.
And we're bringing you news from around the Zoom room, around the rooms, and around the recovery world.
Headline news, taken from page 29 of Joe McHugh's book, The Steps We Took. Quote, believing is the state of mind we must have before we can begin any project. It is an individual force that we all have. Believing defines the limits of our lives. Belief is an awesome force. Everybody has it, but what matters is how we use it and apply it in our lives, end quote. So Kendall, what exactly is isolation?
Well, my definition of isolation, Allie, is aloneness, apart from others. And according to dictionary.com, other synonyms for isolation include separation, segregation, setting apart, keeping apart, quarantine, insulation, seclusion, closeting, protection, shielding, partitioning, solitariness, loneliness, friendlessness, lack of contact, sense of exile, remoteness, and inaccessibility. Interestingly enough, antonyms for isolation include contact and accessibility.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Kendall, but this just in. From our breaking newsroom, we have our Jurassic Park update. A new dinosaur has emerged since the COVID-19 pandemic. Troglodytes are on the rise. Okay, Kendall, I'm not familiar with troglodytes. What in the world is a troglodyte? Are you a troglodyte? Am I a troglodyte?
Maybe. Let's take a look at what a troglodyte is. To quote from vocabulary.com, a troglodyte is a person who lives alone in seclusion. You could call this a hermit or a recluse, but it's more fun to say troglodyte. Troglodyte is from the Latin word troglodae. This originates from the Greek. Trogl means hole or cave, and dien meaning to enter or dive into. The word translates to mean he who dwells in caves. So while a troglodyte can be what we think of as a prehistoric caveman, nowadays, a troglodyte generally refers to someone who lives alone, like a hermit. So if you're isolating a lot, you might just be a troglodyte. Oh, we'll be back in a few minutes with an update on the weather. And now for the section we like to call What Isn't Recovery?
It isn't just reading, and it isn't just prayer.
It isn't just talking, and it isn't just meditation.
It isn't just journaling.
It isn't just listening.
It isn't just venting.
It isn't just meetings.
It isn't just phone calls, and it isn't just service work.
So why doesn't venting work? Venting is helpful. It's a release on my pressure cooker brain, but it's only temporary and not necessarily healing.
So why doesn't reading work in and of itself? Reading alone doesn't model integrated action, but reading does serve as a guide and template to build upon the knowledge and understanding it offers.
So what is recovery? Integrating all of the above.
Up next, moments of clarity, 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 clarity.
So Allie, what was your first memorable recovery phone call like?
Well, for me, my first memorable recovery phone call was calling the admissions line to the ranch, Pennsylvania. It definitely wasn't an easy call to make, and I was completely frightened when I drove up the hill to this facility the next day, not knowing what to expect. After all, I was so messed up. I'd only been clean for 2 weeks at that point. But as I talked about in my share, it was truly a life-changing experience and one that set me on my current recovery path. So while I learned my recovery isn't easy, it's about the journey, not the destination. So Kendall, same question. What was your first memorable recovery phone call like?
Well, I can tell you what it wasn't. It wasn't easy. I was hesitant, reticent, nervous, puzzled, anxious, and really unsure what to say. When a seasoned recovery bud offered to start with saying hello. Oddly enough, hello was enough to break the ice and facilitate a conversation with someone else who knew what it was to feel those exact same emotions when they started recovery. I can also tell you what it was. It was a shattering of my cocoon of isolation and otherness. It helped me realize that recovery works if I would give it a chance. Phone calls now are life preservers, and there are people who will listen and who will offer suggestions of what helps them practice recovery.
So Kendall, what do you do when you reach out and someone doesn't call you back?
I move on. I move on to the next number and the next and the next until someone picks up. The next person that offered their number in the chat or in the in-person meeting. Now that I'm genuinely wanting recovery rather than nurse another festering resentment that my call wasn't returned, I need to reach out one more time and say that magic word, hello.
Thank you, Kendall. And now the weather report. Today's weather, the outlook looks cold and bleak with dense fog, heavy intermittent rain, and dark skies looming without the tools of recovery. Hope, gladness, and sunshine are possibilities, gradually lifting the fog with clearer, calmer, brighter skies as we progress in our recovery journey to what page 164 of the Big Book of AA calls the road of happy destiny. Here are some guidelines for internal climate change that help promote and facilitate healthy, radiant recovery. Avoid burning toxic emissions from resentments. Set both short-term and long-term recovery goals. Use something like the Baby Step Boot Camp, which we'll talk about a little later on and will also be in our recovery resources sheet that will be posted in the chat. Committing to working the steps with a healthy sponsor, and I can't underestimate how important this one is. Eliminate known toxic offenders, people, places, and things which threaten our stability and our recovery. And do our best to adapt and mitigate internal stressors like anxiety and depression by staying out of HALT. Kendall, can you tell us a little more about HALT?
HALT. If I am hungry, I need to eat. If I am angry, I need to talk it out, write it out. If I am lonely, I need to be around people or make a phone call. And if I am tired, I need to go to sleep. And in other news, what's the news about watching the news? Can we become addicted to the news? Allie?
Yes, it's called doom scrolling or nonstop news anxiety. This can also come from too much time spent using social media. Collectively, this can not only add to our anxiety, but also our depression and isolation. I don't know about you, Kendall, but watching too much news or spending too much time on social media can actually sabotage my recovery and again, increase my isolation. But I have to remember to take it back to step one and realize what's in my control and what's not. I need to realize what I'm powerless over and do my best to not let it take away my sanity. So what is in my control is knowing when to turn off the news and walk away from social media. Kendall, how does watching the news affect you?
It makes me anxious, nervous, distrusting, and angry. I mean, I know this is a news broadcast and everything, but let's be real. Since I'm not a political activist, lobbyist, or volunteer, I had to surrender that watching the news was making me a wreck. It was definitely not adding to my recovery. I found it divisive and alienating, even with some of my closest friends. I was advised to stop watching the news for 3 days. Stop watching TV for three days. I was like, huh? You're not serious. What do you mean not watch the TV for 3 days? I had to surrender. My way wasn't working, and I decided to let go of watching TV for 3 days. It diminished my anxiety from current events. Ignorance might not be bliss, but taking a time out, turning off the news and social media, it can be a blessing because we can minimize the political and negative reinforcements of the negative reinforcement of political and current events, as well as everything in social media and the whirlpool of angst it all creates.
Now in the world of finance, making prudent decisions one day at a time regarding finances, including expenditures and sources of revenue, gaping financial losses can be closed and minimized using our seventh tradition. We are self-supporting by our own contributions. So how do we do this? Invest in recovery resources, plan accordingly, whether it be budgeting or something else, minimize expenditures, maximize productivity, and discover and utilize community resources. To do this, we need to let go of fear and pride.
And now for the traffic report. In traffic news today, there is some congestion and traffic accidents around the Beltway and in the city and in the brains of our recovery family. We need to keep in mind slowing down, yielding the right of way, being careful with changing weather conditions, and keeping our vehicles and ourselves well maintained. will minimize errors in judgment and accidents, slips, and relapses. Book reviews. According to a two-person poll conducted by Kindle and Allie, the top 10 recovery books of all time are: 1, The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous; 2, The 12 Steps and 12 Traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous; 3, The Steps We Took by Joe McHugh; 4, The Big Red Book about Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families; 5, The Big Book of Codependence Anonymous; 6, Blue Narcotics Anonymous Basic Textbook; 7, The Language of Letting Go by Melody Beatty; 8, The 24-Hour Day Meditation Book of AA; 9, The Al-Anon Textbook; 10, The Courage to Change Meditation Book of Al-Anon.
And our 3 honorable mentions are Trauma and the 12 Steps by Jamie Mark, ACA Daily Affirmations, Strengthening My Recovery, and Codependence Anonymous, In This Moment. Wow, Kindle, that is an amazing wealth of resources and so many choices. With that and all the other books out there, where does one begin?
Well, Allie, our sponsors are our guides. My sponsor helped show me that the first 3 books listed were essential, especially as they refer to the original literature of our founding 12-step organization, Alcoholics Anonymous. However, regardless of which books are used or which fellowship, the core principles and steps of recovery remain essentially unchanged. And in entertainment news, there's a new movie out about one of our recovery family and her journey called Adopting Audrey, starring Jenna Malone. The debut was at the Independent Theater in Charlotte, North Carolina last month and received excellent reviews. It's a story of one woman's extraordinary journey of advertising in the Charlotte Observer for a family to adopt her as an adult after detaching from her birth family.
Wow, Kindle, that sounds really good. I can't wait to check that out. Any news on a reboot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
Well, Allie, I would like to comment that is the case, but I haven't heard anything to confirm it yet. But I do know that watching the black and white episodes of I Love Lucy and the Andy Griffith Show do lift serotonin levels and facilitate giggling. Oops, I forgot, no giggling in recovery. Back to you, Allie.
What about watching other comedies like The Three Stooges, Laurel and Hardy, The Carol Burnett Show, or The Muppets?
Those are all great suggestions too. It has been scientifically proven that laughter is the best medicine.
Now for a tried and true, much beloved game of answers and questions. Welcome to Weasel Word Jeopardy.
But Allie, did you know there's 2 new columns on Jeopardy now?
No, Kindle, what are they?
Well, the first one is Weasel Worditis. Would you like to choose an answer?
Sure, I'll take Weasel Words for 800, Alex. Oops, sorry, Kindle, that just slipped out.
Oh, good choice. For $800, the weasel word or weaselly phrase most often gets us into trouble.
Oh, wait a minute. I know this one. What is no problem?
That's good, but not quite. Try again.
What is don't even think about it.
I've used that one before, but not even close.
What is absolutely? I'd be happy to help.
That's a great one too, but still not the most common one. Sorry, Allie. The correct answer, what is saying yes when I really mean no? Sorry, I can't give you the $800, but you do get a gold star for the day.
Darn, okay. I was really hoping for that $800, but I'll take the gold star. So what's the other new category?
Insanity for $600 and the daily double. The answer is 3 definitions of insanity.
Ooh, the question is, what are doing the same things over and over again, expecting a different result? If you always do what you always did, then you'll always get what you always got. And if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Ding, 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 ding. Yes, Allie, that is the right answer. Sorry, no $600, but you did get another gold star. And in tonight's Sportscast, So what's new in the world of recovery sports, Allie?
Well, I'm not sure about sports, but we do have several exercises that can help with recovery. That is, unless you count the next recovery Super Bowl game between the isolating weasels and the getting out and socializing fear crushing Goliaths. It looks promising for the fear crushing Goliaths, and we're actually hoping for a 500-0 shutout win over the isolating weasels. But we know that's going to take practice, time, and lots of exercise.
Allie, I'm looking forward to that game for sure. What are some recovery exercises we can do to get ready?
Well, for one, we recommend the baby step boot camp. At least 5 minutes quiet time. Focus on breathing and intention for the day, i.e., peace, acceptance, serenity. Deep breathing even helps with that too. Start with a one-page journal entry in which it doesn't matter whether you use crayon or multicolor ink or something else. It doesn't even have to make sense. Just put what's in your head and in your heart down on paper. Create an A to Z gratitude list. Cultivate an attitude of gratitude. Try for regular 10-minute walks. Create positive affirmation sticky notes or a list of positive affirmations. Post them where you'll see them every day. And read a daily meditation. And we have some of those in our resource sheet for suggestions. So, Kendall, do you have any other exercises we can recommend for people to get ready for this recovery journey?
Repeat after your sponsor. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter what they think.
But doesn't it matter?
No, because they're going to think, do, or say whatever they want, whatever they're going to think, do, or say whatever they want anyway. It is out of our control. And now for our wind down questions. Allie, what is your responsibility in recovery as you see it now?
Let go of the fear and realize our physical health, mental health, and recovery are worth it. We are worth it. We matter. We are valued. We are loving and loved. We are beautiful. And we don't need to be letting anyone else tell us otherwise. So, Kendall, what is your responsibility in recovery as you see it now?
I finally got it. Share the message one day at a time. Take action daily. Break unhealthy patterns and addiction to isolation. Don't recreate painful memories in my brain. Focus on gratitude. Share my challenges to lessen my burden and gain wisdom. Reach out. Ask for help and understand there really are good people in this world. Allie, you seem distressed. Something calling on you?
It's just that it's those annoying ants.
Ants?
Oh, come on, Kendall. Ants in recovery are automatic negative thoughts. They're my go-to when I'm in isolation mode.
Well, Allie, I don't want to leave you or anyone else with ants and a gold star.
Well, I do have ant repellent.
Really awesome. What's the name of it?
Well, it's not Raid and it's not in a can, but rather it's all those canned answers. Oops, sorry. I mean, tools our sponsors are forever suggesting.
Do go on.
Well, my ant repellent is do the opposite. Do the opposite of the unhealthy habit. But we talk more on that in our resource sheet, which we'll post again in the chat.
Wrapping up our recovery news broadcast, this is Kendall reporting from North Carolina.
And Allie from Maryland, bringing you the news from around the Zoom room, around the rooms, and around the recovery world.
Again, we'd like to welcome our special guest, Paul N., who's going to lead us through a 5-minute meditation. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Kendall. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you
Yep.
just fine.
Oh,
Thank you.
great. Thank you. And thank you for your service. That was phenomenal. It was just fantastic. And Allie, thank you for your story. I really appreciate that. Hi, everybody. My name is Paul N., and I'm from Atlanta. And I'm a grateful recovering codependent. And I'm really just happy to be here tonight. And I just feel so much better just listening to that news break. And I picked up a lot of refreshed myself on a lot of tools and sayings too. So I really appreciate that. So now I was asked to lead us through a little meditation. It's different than the activity we just went through. And just to kind of get us grounded, I always like to start it with just a little tiny little coda reading that I pulled for this evening. So together, we're learning how to love and be loved, and how to live life rather than survive it. Recovery in coda is an ongoing process. It's a life that constantly challenges us. Recovery isn't earned like a merit badge. It's a way of living that evolves within us every day. So if you would just kind of find a place to sit that's comfortable. Maybe put both of your feet on the ground, or if you like, you can sit on the floor or lay down if you prefer, just to be comfortable and be grounded where you're at. Put your hands either on your knees or on your thighs, either way, up or down, and sit up straight so your back is nice and straight, and your spine is nice and straight, and you can feel the energy flowing from your head down into your feet. It's how we like to sit. If you'd like, you can close your eyes a little bit, but it's not necessary to do so. Whatever you feel safe and comfortable doing. I wrote something for tonight. We were all born with the need of community, a healthy, loving community. Community isn't just something from which we receive gifts. It's something to which we bring our unique gifts. Of these, sometimes we are unaware. This is a simple form of meditation. There is no right or wrong way, and I invite you to give yourself just 5 minutes free from distractions this evening. Let's start with 3 deep breaths. Breathe in, taking a deep breath into your belly, and hold, and breathe out, contracting your belly. Again, breathe in, taking a deep breath into your belly. Hold, and breathe out. And again, in, hold, and out. You may find that you have thoughts coming into your head. Don't judge them, just let them go. Simply let them come into your head and then let them float away. Just let them float away. Now, in your mind's eye, think of someone that you love or care a lot about, or someone that you cherish. In your mind's eye, place them carefully in front of you, just to the left. Now, think of your family, whether it's your biological family, your recovery family. Think of them in your mind's eye. Gather them together. Carefully place them in front of you, just to the right. Next, think of someone you're challenged with, maybe somebody that you hold a resentment. Think of who that is in your mind's eye, who that might be. And when you have that person, place them ever so carefully directly in front of you. And finally, take all the people on the world and surround them, surround yourself with them. From your right side, all the way around your back, all the way around your left side. Everybody in the world with you sitting in the center. Picture with your mind's eye a healing blue light just above your head. It's in the form of a ball about the size of a golf ball or an egg. Beautiful blue light. It's sitting about an inch above the crown of your head, just slightly to the front of your head. Close your eyes and notice the beautiful blue color swirling, vibrant, healing blue energy. Let this beautiful healing blue light descend on your head and permeate the crown of your head, your crown chakra. You can feel this beautiful blue light gently gliding past your forehead, alleviating any negative thoughts. This blue light continues down your neck, your shoulders, just releasing any stress and tightness and bringing healing energy. Down travels this blue light past your torso, your arms, your elbows, your wrists, your hands, your fingers, filled with this blue, brilliant, healing light. Past your torso to your waist, your legs, your knees, your ankles, down through your feet and surrounding your toes. And just take a moment and feel this brilliant blue healing light moving all through your body. It's bringing loving, healing energy to every single cell in your body. Slowly, you notice the light gathering in your heart, swirling around your heart, just gathering from all the extremities of your body around your heart, surrounding it, filling it. And as it does, the light transforms into a beautiful, white, pure light in your heart. This pure white light is surrounding your heart. Now, you let it go from your heart towards the people in your circle. First, this beautiful white light travels to the person that you hold a resentment to, bringing healing light, bringing this person your gift. Then, the white light travels to the one that you cherish and surrounds them, travels to the family and surrounds them, surrounds everybody on this Zoom meeting. Your beautiful white light surrounds everybody in this Zoom meeting. Then across all the beings on the globe. Your gift, your white healing light. And in the middle of this white light is you, bringing the gift for everybody else. How magnificent it feels. How loving it feels. How connecting it feels. Sit for a moment with this community. Sit for a moment with this feeling of connectedness. And sit for the gratitude for gifts of healing. Slowly let your meditation come to an end. Slowly let your mind come back, but remembering what you left and your gift. Begin to feel your body in the room, supported by your chair. Feel grounded in the Zoom room. Feel the love and support from everybody on the Zoom. Feel the compassion. And when you're ready, open your eyes and join us back here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time tonight and joining me, being invited to that meditation.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Paul.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you for that very peaceful healing meditation. That was amazing. At this point, we like to open up our Zoom room for 2 to 3 minute shares on how isolation has impacted your life and recovery strategies that have helped. We ask that you please be your own timekeeper, and also a gentle reminder that this is being recorded.
Any takers? Vernell.
Hi, everybody. I'll start out. I'm Vernell, a recovering codependent and an adult child of a fear-based and dysfunctional family, but I've been adulting lately and it feels good. And this presentation and this talk tonight and the stories were just heartwarming. The meditation was just absolutely, I felt myself being transformed. It was just great. I loved the humor because as we talk about in recovery, we can have fun. We have fun. We can find humor and still find recovery. And one thing that came to me, I think, in what was read about the RAID, there is an acronym, a recovery acronym for RAID. Do you know it? Recognize it, accept it, whatever it is, interview it, and detach. There's the RAID that I know about, and that goes with the killing the ants. So thank you guys. It was awesome, and I am just inspired by your stories, Allie and Kendall. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vernell. Tara.
I just want to say how much I really appreciated the speaker's shares this evening. and the topic. I've been struggling with addiction and isolation myself, going through some health issues. It's been chronic health issues for several years, but it seems like I just keep running into new hurdles. And what has really helped is my support groups and being able to connect with other people that are going through the same thing or have been through the same thing in the past and are able to offer encouragement and relate to the challenges. And it really does make a world of difference when one doesn't feel so alone in these struggles. So I'm very grateful for the support groups, for all the different, I go to several different support groups, and very thankful for all of you here. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Tara.
Pat, Madeline, and Nancy.
It's going to be Nancy.
Did we lose you?
This time it's Nancy. So first of all, I just the newscast, and I've dealt with isolation off and on my whole life, and I remember in the 6th grade, I wrote in my diary that I didn't need anyone. And that's really what I thought. And so I have to work hard not to get back in that isolation. And I think the one antidote to me for isolation is the acceptance and love of the people in the program. Feeling that acceptance and that love, that unconditional love, is what keeps me coming back and what keeps me from isolating and what makes me want to carry the message. So that's all.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. Laura.
Hi, everyone. Laura from Louisiana, adult, child, and codependent. I just wanted to say, wow, I am so glad I did not miss this. This was incredible. Thank you all. I get it was a ton of work, and your stories were courageous, and you were so candid, and it was so heartfelt. And I just feel really blessed to be in this meeting tonight. And the last thing I'll say was loneliness. There's been some talk recently in the headlines, no pun intended, in the headlines. Loneliness is more deadly than cancer and heart disease and obesity and smoking, I think, 15 cigarettes a day. So kudos to everybody shedding light on it. We all suffer from it, from those of us in recovery. And you gave us some wonderful, wonderful ideas and tools. My favorite part, I'll say in closing, was when you guys said, this is what recovery is not. I thought that was so great. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. So glad to hear.
Sally.
Yeah, Sally, ECA, and gosh, I just want to echo the thanks. I was thinking about how much service this was and how appreciative I am. I know one of the ways I isolate is to be afraid to do service because I'm afraid to let somebody else even see me in recovery. The other thing that I was really thinking about tonight was how areas that I've thought have been healthy in my life, like say excelling in say academics or something, that I suddenly saw tonight, it's just another form of isolation because I would be really egotistical in that area and think I was better than. And it was like a way in which I'm still separating myself. And so tonight was just so many reminders how it doesn't have to just be isolating alone in my house. I can actually go out into work or in public and isolate myself as better than or separate from my fellow man. And gosh, just again, so much appreciation. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. And Abby?
Well, I'm going to be the first one to say you guys did an amazing job. I am just blown away by how much recovery the two of you have. I mean, it really is an incredible recovery journey. You just get it and you share it. And I'm so appreciative. For me, it brought to light that I do still isolate. I have a tendency to not want to be around people that I don't want to be around. And I don't even want to fake it anymore. And that is a little bit of isolation. I don't have problems going out. I choose to be with people who I feel comfortable with. But when it comes to not wanting to be in a situation and just being professional and chit chatty, I'm not interested. So I don't know if that's age or still some extra work I need to do, but anyway, you guys rocked it. Yikes, we're up next. Tough act to follow. So, but I'm so thrilled for your recovery. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Thank you so much, Abby.
Thank you, Abby. And we'll actually close out with Barbara.
Hi, I'm Barbara, grateful recovering adult child. I won't call anybody's name out, but I am so appreciative and grateful that this person called me and told me about this meeting. Otherwise, I would not be here. And Paul, Allie, Kendall, that was just so, I don't even know the word for it for me. I feel so energized, so inspired. I feel like something has happened inside of me as a result of, just being a part of this wonderful experience. So thank you so very kindly. I appreciate it. Isolation has been a big part of my life. And I think for a long time, I would say that's because I enjoy my own company. And I do enjoy being, my own company, but at the same time, I do know that it takes some work sometimes for me to push myself outside and to be with people, even though I love being with people. I love meeting people. I love learning about other people. But it's just not easy. I came from a very dysfunctional family. I'm not sure, why that is, but for the longest, I was just very uncomfortable in the presence of a lot of people, especially if I felt that you were so different from me. But this program has taught me that there are a lot of similarities in us as humans. We are different in a lot of ways, but we are also similar in a lot of ways. And I think that's what has kept me as part of this wonderful fellowship. I have always tried to look for the similarities instead of the differences. And I will continue to do that on my recovery journey. And I just can't say enough about the loving and the wonderful vibes that I'm getting just by looking into each of your faces on this Zoom meeting. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for giving me the space to share that.
Thank you, Barbara. We're so glad you're
Thank you,
here.
Barbara. All right, in closing, we want to thank you for attending the second of our special topic Zoomcast series. The video of this broadcast will be posted on our YouTube channel, Growing in Recovery, in the next week. If you weren't able to access the resources in the chat, feel free to email growinguptogetherinrecovery, all one word, at gmail.com to request a copy. Also, to learn more about the 12 steps and for other recovery topic Zoomcasts on abandonment, shame, finding a sponsor, dealing with anger, resentment, manipulation, and fear, you can go to YouTube and search for Growing in Recovery. Again, the link actually was posted a little earlier in the chat box and is also on the resources handout and the special topics flyer that are also in the chat box. Our next Zoomcast will be November 9th, 7:30 p.m. and we will talk about how we can't buy freedom and how to use recovery for financial and personal independence. And as we bring this Zoomcast to a close, we would like to remind you, feel free to take any ideas you gained here tonight, or as they said in a previous Zoomcast, take what you want and leave the rest. But who you saw here and what they said here, please let it stay here when you leave here. We'd like to close with an excerpt from AA's big book, Stay Muted, but you can repeat with me. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact in my life unacceptable to me, and I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at this moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens in God's world by mistake. Unless I accept life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. The need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and in my attitudes.
And now the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Do or do not, there is no try. Jedi Master Yoda.
If anyone didn't tell you they love you today,
We don't know why the hell they
didn't. Thanks for letting us share.